My name is Keaton, and I am a tour guide. I'm a naturalist tour guide, which means I take people out into nature, primarily Grand Canyon National Park, and I tell them about nature as well as natural history. So that includes anything from like geology to biology and ecology. I also find history very fascinating, so I talk a lot about history and the history of conservation and naturalism. I do what I do because I love it. I love being in the outdoors. I love wondering about the world around me and trying to figure out the answers to questions that I find interesting, particularly why different trees will grow in different places, why there are different temperatures and ecosystems in different regions or different elevations. I find animal life and their interactions with the natural world around them very fascinating, and I feel like we as people are part of that natural world, and we should learn how to be out in nature, experience it, but also find that wonder and that mystery about, why things are the way they are, because there are answers to those questions. Being a naturalist means you're out in nature, often alone. Takes a special kind of person who wants to hike 10 miles to go see a particular mountain ridge that might have some kind of interest to the geologist or to the biologist to see just what kind of trees are on there, and it's not for everybody. So I spend a lot of my time hiking and being on the trail and looking and listening at the world around me, trying to figure out what I find interesting, ask questions about the place I'm in or the animals that I'm seeing, and then later on try to figure out the answers to those questions. I don't think it's a particularly expensive hobby. There are a lot of high-end like jackets and backpacks and a bunch of gear that you can buy if you'd like to, but there's also plenty of gear you can find at like the thrift shop or garage sales or hand-me-downs. And hiking gear is designed to be in the outdoors, in nature, kind of take a beating. So I found that a lot of the hiking gear that I do get often lasts me years and years and years. Once you've got a backpack, some water, some food, good shoes, good socks, and good clothing, that's pretty much it. That's all you need to be a naturalist, is you just gotta have the fuel to be out on the trail. Oftentimes people think that I'm an adrenaline junkie or I'm trying to go out there and push the limits, but that's not really me. I do like, snowboarding and whitewater rafting and hiking. I do it in an effort to experience the world that we live in, and the rush that you get from doing those activities is a lot of fun, but I also find like sitting in nature, hanging a tree hammock, kind of enjoying the scenery, listening to the birds around you, like that's just as fulfilling as, snowboarding down a mountain at 50 miles an hour or rushing through a whitewater rapid. A lot of misconceptions about naturalists is that they are survivalists. They go out into nature to survive and live more primitively. But naturalists are more scientists. They go out and observe nature, try and learn about it, research it, ask questions, find theories to answer those questions, and then the main goal is to share it with other people. I love learning about the information and the natural world, but even more so, I love sharing it with people. That's what I love about being a tour guide, is that, I meet a lot of people from cities, from different parts of the world who might not be as in tune with nature. And I feel like in a couple of minutes, just being out at a national park or in a national forest, you can have people observing, what's around them. Things they would have missed, without the naturalist eye, you can kind of point out to them and show them what there is to experience in nature and what you can learn about it. People are surprised by a number of different things, particularly at the Grand Canyon. People are always surprised that the river carved away the entire Grand Canyon. They think, oh man, that tiny little river, that couldn't be responsible for this huge big canyon. What I find fascinating is that that's the natural world we live in. Things like water and erosion are constantly occurring. They just take a long time to see an impact. The Grand Canyon formed over 5.5 million years of erosion. So for some people, they can't wrap their mind around that river carving that huge canyon, and other people can't wrap their mind around 5.5 million years of time. But essentially, if we look at the processes that are occurring today and we kind of work backwards from there, we can estimate that, yeah, for the past 5.5 million years, the river has been flowing the way it is today. And through all that time, the forces of erosion have carved out this nice, beautiful canyon for us to come and look at. People are often scared of the danger of going out into nature and being attacked by a wild animal or encountering a venomous snake or a venomous spider. People are scared of being alone and hearing the sounds of the forest around them. But yeah, a big misconception is that if you leave the animals alone, they're gonna leave you alone. Animals are attracted to people for a few different reasons, primarily food and trash. And so if you know the proper etiquette of storing your food in the proper place, taking care of your trash, making sure that the animals are not attracted to you, they're gonna leave you alone. We are not necessarily on the menu for mountain lions or black bears or the kind of predators we have here in Arizona. Rattlesnakes and scorpions and spiders, you know, they're not after humans. So my rule is if you leave the snakes alone, the snakes will leave you alone, and that's pretty much that easy. There are currently problems in conservation and preservation. Here in the Western United States, we are currently in the middle of a water crisis. We have a lot of cities and a lot of farmland and a lot of agriculture built up in the Southwest, but we're in a drought right now. And all of our reservoirs that have been supplying the water for the cities, for the farms, for the livestock, they're at historic lows. It's concerning because we rely on that water for our cities, for our drinking, for our animals, for our crops. I mean, water is key to life. Here in the Western states, the big crisis is water, and where are we going to get it from? A lot of our reservoirs rely on snowmelt to trickle down through the spring into the summer, kind of fill up our reservoirs, maintain those water levels. But right now, we're not just getting less snow, but it's also getting warmer faster. And that increase in early temperatures is leading to more evaporation. The snow isn't sticking around and trickling into our reservoirs, it's evaporating back up into the sky, and we're not able to capture it. The problems with our use of water, the current drought we're in, climate change making things warmer and warmer, those all play a role on our lives, you know, and we think about it in the cities, but also the animals, the plants, the ecosystems, they rely on that water just as much as we do. As we're removing it from the rivers and the reservoirs, it is at the detriment of our natural world. You know, there are a lot of different remedies for the conditions we're in. Probably the first step is just being conscious of using water. You know, and even if you don't live in the desert or in the West, like you can always think about using water when you're brushing your teeth in the morning. Do you have to have the water constantly running while you're doing the brushing, or can you get your toothbrush a little wet, do a little brushing, do a little rinsing, you know, use it here and there. Same is true for like washing your hands, washing your car, washing your dishes. There are a lot of ways we kind of use and abuse water that could be reduced and mitigated, and I think people could live the same fulfilling lives with less water. But, you know, those are steps that people need to consciously take and make to make a difference. And even though it's very small scale with the individual, collectively, we could all potentially make a dent in our water usage. And then also in agriculture, there could be better practices. Currently, a lot of farms use flood irrigation. Just flood the entire field and let the plants do with the water they can, and then the rest of the water runs off and evaporates. Whereas if we made like better irrigation, we had better farming techniques where we produced similar amounts of yield but with less water, I think that could go a long way in helping to reduce our need for the reservoirs. But at the same time, you know, we've built cities and civilizations in the desert. Many people have done that before us, particularly the ancestors of the Hopi, the Puebloan people, the indigenous people who have lived here on the Colorado Plateau, and they learned over time how to not overuse the land. Primarily, their history is one through migration. They would settle in a certain place for a certain period of time and then eventually move and migrate to another place, eventually reconsolidating where the Hopi tribe is today. But a lot of their cities and remnants are found throughout the Colorado Plateau, and it points to times in the past where civilizations have dealt with water crises and droughts and failing agriculture, and I think we can learn a lot by looking at that history and trying to figure out how our civilization is going to move forward into the 21st century. Geology was, I wouldn't say my first love, but I came to love it through its relationship to biology and ecology. My main degree in college was life sciences, which is a biology degree where I learned about ecology and genetics and microbiology and my favorite course, herpetology, the study of lizards and snakes. When you learn all about that and you start to learn about different ecosystems come from different resources being available in different places. Why those resources are in some places and not others, a lot of that has to do with the geology of the area. So when I first started tour guiding, I found a mentor named Canyon Dave, and he was a geology professor who runs Grand Canyon tours, and I thought if I worked for him, he could kind of mentor me about, the rock layers of the Colorado Plateau, the natural history of the Grand Canyon, and the more you learn about that, the more you realize that geology is really what's affecting all the different ecosystems and plants and animals that live at the Grand Canyon. The rim of the Grand Canyon is 7,000 feet above sea level, but the rim itself is made of limestone, which formed as ocean beds hundreds of millions of years ago. So the geology of the limestone layers being laid down along with sandstones and shales, all of that occurred over hundreds of millions of years ago as different ecosystems existed in what is now Arizona. 70 million years ago, tectonic plates started colliding, and the collision caused an uplift which raised the ocean floor from the seabed 1.5 miles up into the air to 7,000 feet. So that geologic event created the Colorado Plateau. And now you've got all these layers at different elevations. And the higher elevations create different temperatures. They produce weather events. Around 6 million years ago, volcanoes started erupting at the edge of the Colorado Plateau in what is now the area of Williams and Flagstaff. And we call that the San Francisco Volcanic Field, which built more mountains on top of the plateau and kept pushing the elevation further and further into the sky until eventually the San Francisco peaks formed. Even though today their peaks are remnants of what used to exist as the top of the mountain, those peaks are still the highest points in all of Arizona. 100 years ago, there was a scientist named Dr. C. Hart Merriam, and he studied the plants and animals of the San Francisco peaks, of the Grand Canyon, and he found out all those elevation changes created different temperatures, that created different plants, that led to different animals, and he described these as zones of life. And over time, the zones of life concept developed into ecology, into ecosystems. Geology, ecology, biology, and history, they're all interwoven. If you love one and understand the other, it'll help enhance your understanding of these different subjects. So I find all of those fields very interesting. People should get out in nature more just because it's fun. I mean, going for a hike, walking through the forest, it's beautiful, the air is fresh, the birds are singing, and I mean, it just puts a smile on your face to go for a good hike. Now, the other reason people should be interested in nature is the mystery, the wonder. You're not just out hiking, through a beautiful trail, you're hiking through different kinds of trees, different kinds of birds are around you, and then starting to ask the questions about, why are these trees here? Why does that bird sing such a beautiful song? Why are deer and elk frolicking through the forest? It all has to do with the kind of vegetation that's around you. When you go hiking, it's not just going for a walk. You're going on an adventure. And it might be a small adventure, might just be a couple miles, might be a little hike, might get you to a nice view, but that little tiny bit of adventure is gonna put a smile on your face, and you're gonna come back home asking more questions than you had before you set out. And if you keep following those questions, you'll find the answers. And those answers are very fulfilling knowledge to have that makes you wanna go out more, do more hiking, maybe take your adventure to the next step. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you are with it, and the happier you'll be. The happiness I get is telling people about the natural world and unlocking these mysteries that they never even thought about. I can't tell you how many people I take to the Grand Canyon and are surprised that there are trees there. There's a whole forest of ponderosa pine trees and pinyon pine trees and juniper trees, Douglas fir trees, spruce trees, all kinds of trees that grow on the rim of the Grand Canyon, and everyone just thinks Arizona is a big desert. They think the canyon is a wasteland, but there are thousands of different plants and animals and people who have lived in the Grand Canyon for thousands of years because of its rich abundance of natural resources. When I tell them about, why the trees are here, because of the nice high elevation we have, the cooler temperatures, that leads to a ponderosa pine forest. You look down into the canyon and you see cottonwoods growing. That's where the water is. There are springs and creeks and rivers leading down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Then you look at the walls, and some are cliffs and some are ledges. Some of them have boulder fields, some of them have scrubby pine trees. And all of that layering has to do with the geology, the ecosystems that existed hundreds of millions of years ago. That is what really makes me happy, is helping people have that experience. Not just go to the Grand Canyon or go to a beautiful place and look at a beautiful view, but understand why we as humans are drawn to that natural beauty. And it all has to do with the fact that for hundreds of thousands of years, we lived in and amongst the natural environment. Today we still do. It's just sometimes you gotta leave the city, leave your town, go out and find that nature. But once you're in it, your body knows exactly what to do and you'll just be at peace. It matters because it's not always going to be around. I've been talking about the Grand Canyon a lot, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. That is a big question, the wonder. I wonder why this canyon is here and nowhere else in the world. Well, another natural wonder of the world is the Great Barrier Reef. That huge ecosystem in and of itself is also threatened today. There is coral bleaching going on. There are huge die-offs around the Great Barrier Reef. A lot of that is also impacted by climate change and the things that we're putting into the natural world. Glaciers as well. How many glaciers are going to be around 50, 100 years from now? You might not be able to see it. So while the natural world does slowly change over time, our impact of it is increasing that change. And usually we don't see these changes that take geologic eons to occur. Because of the speed of progress, a lot of these natural wonders of the world are diminishing. And it might be within our lifetime that you're no longer able to go and see those natural wonders. So I think people should just get out and go see it now while they can, and then hopefully seeing it will encourage them to think about the preservation, think about the conservation, think about the fact that their children, their grandchildren might not get to have that experience. And once you've had such an amazing experience, like going to the Great Barrier Reef or seeing a glacier or looking at the Grand Canyon, it's something you want to share with the rest of the world, with your children, with your grandchildren. That was the whole idea of the national parks, was to preserve and protect the areas for posterity, for the future generations. So I think people should just go out and see it now because it might not be there. Oh, there's just a peace you get when you're in nature, especially if you're hiking along, trying to observe the natural world around you. You start to hear the songs of birds you've never heard before. You can smell the flowers blooming in the spring. You can feel the crunch of snow underneath your feet. That real world experience of being in nature is something that our bodies evolved and adapted to over hundreds of thousands of years. And it's only been within the last few thousand years that we have kind of reverted away from that experience. It's like getting back to your roots. Being in nature is very fulfilling, just in a way that you can't get from watching a movie or going to a concert. Like, these things are all fun, but it's almost a sensory overload. And when you're in nature, your senses are heightened, but they're not overloaded. You can notice the subtle differences, the things here and there. That's what I find is fulfilling about doing hiking and exploring. A lot of people are held back from going out into nature for the fear of animals, but even beyond that, the fear of, not knowing what to do. There's no one out there telling you what's going to come next. You have to find that out when you go around the next trail bend. There's also the, physical challenge of hiking and going down into canyons, up the sides of mountains. That in and of itself can be exhausting. I do think that you need to recognize your own limits and make sure you're not doing something outside of the realm of possibility, but I think a lot of people don't know where that line is. There's also issues with not having nature around you. Some people just live in areas that aren't open to nature. And it's quite the effort to go out, take a trip, take a car ride, take a plane ride, to get to some place that's not filled with other people. So there are multiple reasons why people might not be able to jump right into nature, but I think there are easy steps to take. Go for a walk around your block. And even if you live in a city, hopefully you can find some planted trees or some lawns or maybe a local park to enjoy. You can find a little bit of nature there. Then you hike a mile or so through your neighborhood and you're like, okay, I could hike a mile on a trail. You go out on a trail, you try it out, you like it, you learn more. Maybe you're a little exhausted by the end, but you're stronger for the next time. And then you can go hike 2 miles or 3 miles and you can kind of build your way into it. So I think a lot of people are scared of, flying out of a city, landing in the middle of a wilderness and just going for it. In my opinion, that is probably not what I would advise. You should take those baby steps of walking around your neighborhood, going to the local park. But the more you do it and the more you enjoy it, the more interested in how to do it properly you will be. Once you start asking those questions, you will be able to find the answers. And there are tons of people today who are naturalists and outdoor enthusiasts and hikers and rock climbers and mountain bikers, and it's a huge industry. I don't think anyone should be scared of getting into the outdoors. It's open. We're out here. These are all public lands. It's not pay a ticket to get into the national forest. It's you get here, you're here, this is yours, this is ours, this belongs to the public. While yeah, it is really scary to venture into the unknown, I think if you take the proper steps to kind of make yourself ready, know what you're getting into, and then follow the advice of others, you yourself can become an adventurer and a naturalist and really find the fulfillment in the natural world. Don't you want to see something different? You've watched that TV show how many times? Don't you want to see something amazing that's nowhere else in the world? And I'm not just talking about the Grand Canyon. I'm talking about the national forests, national monuments, state parks, public parks. Don't you want to see something you never seen before and be curious and wonder, why have I spent my whole life and I've never been right here? The most important thing for you to know is that you can do it. You might not be able to hike to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, but you can go and stand on the rim and look at it. You might not be able to fly to Australia and go scuba dive at the Great Barrier Reef, but you can probably go find some ducks at a pond to go feed. You can do it. No matter what your experience is, what your goals are, there is entry. These things are not kept behind closed doors. They're not gated away. They're not only for the select few. You can go out and you can do it. You just got to know where to start. The greatest lesson I've learned is that we live in balance with nature. And while the world is billions of years old, geologic events take hundreds of millions of years to complete, forests can grow for hundreds if not thousands of years, and we might only be here for a century, but that 1 century, that is what we have. And that life can only be lived once. If you're gonna live a life for a limited amount of time, do what you can with it, with what you have, kind of where you are. That might mean a bunch of different things to a bunch of different people, but I think that philosophy will go miles wherever you go in life. It took 5.5 million years for the Colorado River to cut through 5,000 feet of layers of rock and expose the walls and build the natural architecture that we go to look at. It's just not something that could be built in a human lifetime. The life we live is a very limited amount of time on this planet compared to, the rocks and the trees. At the same time, we get good, long lives. Whether you're young, middle-aged, old, anywhere in between, that day that you're living is your day. You have that day to do with what you want. If you decide to go out and take a hike or learn more about nature, I think that is a valuable way to spend some of your time on the earth. I think sometimes in the hustle and bustle of modern life and civilization, we kind of lose track of that concept, that it's actually a very short life to live and we need to enjoy it while it lasts.
Hire us to tell your story. As an independent team of filmmakers, we love producing documentaries for artisans of all trades, honoring skill, passion, and determination.
The fruits of our labor literally creates happiness.
Founded in 2020, we harness our collective experience and enthusiasm for storytelling to deliver content that resonates with viewers on every level.
Think big and think outside of the box.
We avoid the constant noise of clickbait news and outrage headlines, instead crafting more intimate narratives that touch on the purpose of life itself. Stories that not only inform but also inspire, whether it's the art of agriculture, the science of fermentation, an innovative garage startup, or the intricacies of off-grid living. We're here to explore it all and invite you to join us in the discovery.
You're just working with what you have at hand instead of having unrealistic expectations.
We know the world is brimming with hidden stories waiting to be told. These are tales of ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
The biggest thing is to realize that there's nothing that you can't do.
Embodying the American spirit that with hard work, dreams really can come true. So whether you're a garage baker, homegrown mycologist, backyard farmer, or off-grid homesteader, send us a message and share your story with the world.